The Nexus observation vessel Eternal Vigilance hung motionless against the backdrop of Saturn's rings, its adaptive camouflage rendering it virtually invisible to Earth's most advanced detection systems. Inside the ship's primary observation deck, first observer Zixtal reviewed the latest analysis of human technological progression with growing concern. Another quantum computing breakthrough, they noted, their six-fingered hand gesturing at the holographic display. The third this year. The beam's crystalline skin refracted the soft light of the display, casting prismatic patterns across the deck's organic walls. Second observer, Miraven, her serpentine form coiled comfortably in her observation chair, flicked her tongue thoughtfully. The rate of advancement is unprecedented in our records. No other species has progressed from primitive combustion engines to quantum mechanics in mere centuries. It's not just the speed, Zixtal responded, bringing up another display. It's the application. Look at their development pattern. The hologram shifted to show Earth's military history, a cascade of weapons development that made both observers' skin pale slightly. Every advancement, every scientific breakthrough, they find a way to apply it to warfare, even their medical technologies. Miraven's voice trailed off as she studied the data. Are developed first on their battlefields, Zixtal finished. The Nexus Council needs to know. This species, they don't follow any known development pattern. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her heart racing, but her voice steady. The quantum anomalies we've detected in Saturn's orbit aren't natural, she explained, gesturing to the complex data patterns behind her. Something's there. Something that doesn't want to be seen. General Marcus Torres, his dark eyes sharp beneath silver hair, leaned forward. You're certain? The mathematics don't lie, General. Whatever's out there, it's using technology far beyond our current capabilities. But they made one mistake. Sarah pulled up a new diagram. They're so advanced, they didn't account for how primitive some of our detection methods are, like using radio telescopes to detect quantum distortions. Admiral Jessica Hayes, her weathered face bearing the scars of the resource wars, exchanged glances with Torres. How long have they been watching us? Based on the data. At least 50 years. They've seen everything. The resource wars, the Unity Accords, the Mars colonization. Sarah paused, letting the implications sink in. They've seen how we fight, Torres concluded grimly. In the Eternal Vigilance, alarms suddenly blared. Impossible. Miraven's scales bristled. They've detected us. Zixtal's crystalline form pulsed with anxiety as they reviewed the data. They're using obsolete technology in ways our simulations never predicted. The humans have combined primitive radio wave detection with quantum sensors too. They fell silent as a transmission cut through their communications. To the unidentified vessel in Saturn's orbit, a calm human voice echoed through their chamber. This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Council. We know you're there. We know you've been watching. We would welcome peaceful contact, but if that's not your intention. The transmission paused meaningfully. Well, you've seen what humans do when we feel threatened. The Nexus observers sat in stunned silence. First contact protocols had never accounted for this scenario. The observed species wasn't supposed to detect their watchers. They weren't supposed to combine outdated technology with quantum physics in novel ways. And they certainly weren't supposed to issue what amounted to a polite threat. The Council must be notified immediately, Zixtal decided. Humanity isn't just advancing quickly. They're doing it in ways that defy all our predictive models. They take disparate technologies, combine them in ways that should be inefficient or impossible, and somehow make them work. And they're always ready for war, Miraven added softly. Every scientific advancement, every technological breakthrough. They never forget their warrior past. Even their entertainment simulations focus on conflict and combat. As they prepared their emergency transmission to the Nexus Council, Dr. Chen's voice came through again. We've uploaded a data package to your vessel. It contains our history, our achievements, and our hopes for peaceful cooperation with other civilizations. It also includes detailed analyses of every major conflict in human history. Consider it both an introduction and a warning. The choice of what happens next is yours. In the council chamber on Earth, Sarah watched the quantum distortions suddenly vanish from their sensors. "They're gone," she reported, probably to report to their superiors. General Torres nodded grimly. "And now we wait to see if they understand what we're trying to tell them. That humans don't want war. But we're very, very good at it," Admiral Hayes finished. "Let's hope they're wise enough to choose peace. Because if they've really been watching us all this time, they should know what happens when humanity is backed into a corner." As Earth's leadership prepared for whatever would come next, the eternal vigilance streaked through hyperspace, carrying a message that would shake the Nexus to its foundations. Humanity wasn't just another emerging species. They were something entirely new. A species that combined the impossible, expected the improbable, and had turned warfare into an art form. The question that burned in both Zixtal and Miraven's minds was simple. Would the Nexus Council understand that humanity's warning, "Run," wasn't a threat, but an attempt to prevent what humans did best? Turning any conflict, no matter the technological gap, into a war they could win. The Nexus Council chamber was a marvel of bioengineered architecture, its living walls pulsing with neural networks that connected the gathered representatives of 1,000 civilizations. At its center, the holographic data from the Eternal Vigilance played out before the assembled council. High Counselor Vexthor, their crystalline form similar to Sixtal's, but aged to near opacity, spoke first. "These humans, they detected our most advanced stealth technology using primitive radio waves combined with quantum sensors." Their tone carried both disbelief and worry. "Impossible," declared Ambassador Klax, their insectoid mandibles clicking in agitation. "No species develops like this. Technology must progress in logical steps. You cannot simply combine obsolete systems with advanced quantum theory." And yet they did, Miraven testified, her coiled form projected beside the human data. "Everything about their development defies our models. They achieved powered flight, then reached their moon within 66 years. They split the atom, then immediately weaponized it. They developed global communication networks, then created undetectable quantum entanglement systems." On Earth, Sarah Chen stood in the newly established First Contact Center, studying the message the Nexus had finally sent. "They want to test us," she reported to the assembled world leaders, "to assess our capabilities and determine our threat level." "They still don't understand," General Torres muttered, shaking his head, "even after everything they've observed." Admiral Hayes studied the proposed tests. "Look at these challenges: standardized problem-solving scenarios, technological demonstrations, combat simulations. They're trying to categorize us according to their development models." "Should we refuse?" asked President Lai Wei, her hologram flickering slightly from her Beijing office. "No," Sarah replied firmly. "We should show them exactly what they're asking to see. Everything." The first assessment began 3 days later. The Nexus sent 3 ships, massive vessels that dwarfed anything humanity had built. They established a testing ground in Earth's orbit, expecting to demonstrate their technological superiority while evaluating human capabilities. The first test was meant to be simple: solve a series of increasingly complex engineering problems using only provided materials. The Nexus observers watched in confusion as the human team, led by Dr. Chen, consistently ignored the obvious solutions in favor of what seemed like unnecessarily complicated approaches. "They're using the waste heat from one system to power another," Zixtal observed, their crystalline form flickering with confusion. "It's inefficient, impractical, and yet it works better than our approved solution." The second test focused on tactical scenarios. The Nexus presented classical space combat simulations, expecting the humans to fail against their advanced warfare algorithms. Instead, General Torres's team employed strategies that the Nexus computers classified as illogical, and self-defeating, until they won. They sacrificed their strongest units to create an opening. Calax reported, mandibles twitching in agitation. No rational species sacrifices strength for tactical advantage. It defies all military doctrine. Human history is full of such sacrifices, Miraven pointed out. They call it taking one for the team. The final test was meant to be impossible, a no-win scenario designed to assess how humanity handled failure. The Nexus created a simulation of an overwhelming force attacking Earth, expecting the humans to either surrender or fight to annihilation. Instead, Admiral Hayes introduced a variable the Nexus hadn't considered. She surrendered, then triggered a hidden program that turned the Nexus's own simulation protocols against them. In the real world, the testing chamber systems briefly came under human control. Stop the assessment, High Counselor Vexthor ordered, their crystalline form now clouded with concern. They didn't just solve the simulation, they hacked our actual systems through it, using our own protocols as a gateway. In the first contact center, Sarah watched the Nexus ships retreat to a higher orbit. They're discussing what to do next, she reported. I don't think their tests told them what they expected to hear. No, Torres agreed, a grim smile on his face. They wanted to categorize us, to fit us into their understanding of how species develop. Instead, we showed them something they've never seen before. A species that doesn't follow the rules, Hayes added. One that takes their carefully designed tests and turns them sideways. They wanted to assess our capabilities. She paused, looking at the retreating ships. I think we just assessed theirs. In the Nexus Council chamber, the debate raged. They must be contained, Calax insisted. Their development is too unpredictable, too dangerous. But Miraven raised her serpentine head, scales gleaming. Haven't you realized yet? That's exactly what makes them so formidable. We designed tests to measure them by our standards, and they showed us how meaningless those standards are. The question isn't whether we can contain them, Zixtal added quietly. The question is, what will they do when they realize we're trying? As the Nexus Council argued, humanity prepared. They had shown the aliens their ingenuity, their ability to think beyond conventional solutions, and their capacity to turn any system to their advantage. But they had held back their greatest capabilities, the technologies and strategies they had developed in secret. Because humans understood something the Nexus didn't. Sometimes the best defense isn't showing your strength, but making sure your potential adversary underestimates it until it's too late. The quarantine field shimmered into existence without warning, a translucent barrier of energy that encased the entire Earth-Moon system. In the first contact center, alarms blared as sensors registered the unprecedented scale of the containment attempt. They made their choice, Admiral Hayes said quietly, watching the massive Nexus fleet materialize around the barrier. This wasn't the small observation group they'd dealt with before. Hundreds of ships had appeared, their bioorganic hulls forming a second shell around Earth. Dr. Sarah Chin's fingers flew across her quantum interface. The barrier is unlike anything we've seen before. It's not just energy. It's like they've created a localized amendment to the laws of physics. Can we break it? General Torres asked, his calm voice belying the tension in the command center. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They still don't understand how humans think, do they? They created a perfect barrier against any technology they know about. But we don't just innovate. We improvise. Throughout the solar system, hidden installations began powering up. The Nexus had been watching Earth for decades, but they'd missed humanity's greatest deception. While they observed Earth's official space program, they never detected the classified projects scattered across asteroids, moons, and planetary shadows. On the Nexus command ship, High Counselor Vexthor addressed Earth's leaders through a quantum channel. Your species' development cannot be allowed to continue unchecked. The quarantine will remain until you accept Nexus oversight and control. President Lai Wei's response was measured. We warned you once before. We asked for peace. Remember that. You threaten the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Klax interjected, mandibles clicking in derision. Your primitive weapons cannot. The ambassador's words cut off as their sensors detected something impossible. Throughout the solar system, fragments of space itself seemed to tear open. From these ruptures emerged vessels unlike anything the Nexus had encountered, ships that seemed to bend reality around them. Ghost Fleet, you are authorized to engage, Hayes commanded. The hidden ships, products of Project Phantom, represented humanity's true technological achievement. While showing the Nexus their conventional space program, humans had secretly mastered localized space-time manipulation. The Nexus fleet reacted with textbook precision, forming defensive patterns that would have been perfect against any known form of attack. But the Ghost Fleet didn't attack. Instead, the ships simply passed through the quarantine barrier as if it didn't exist. Impossible. Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed with alarm. They're using controlled dimensional phasing. The energy requirements alone should be impossible. Sarah's voice cut through their command channel. Like combining radio waves with quantum sensors. Like turning your simulation protocols against you. Humanity specializes in impossible things. The Ghost Fleet demonstrated this by systematically disrupting the quarantine field. They didn't attack the Nexus ships directly. They didn't need to. Instead, they created localized pockets of altered spacetime that made portions of the barrier simply cease to exist. Torres watched with grim satisfaction as the Nexus fleet scrambled to respond. Show them the rest. Across the solar system, more human installations revealed themselves. Antimatter production facilities hidden in Mercury's orbit. Quantum weapon platforms disguised as asteroids. A network of artificial wormholes connecting strategic points throughout the solar system. All this time, Miraven breathed, her serpentine form coiled tightly in anxiety. They showed us what they wanted us to see. Every test we conducted. They gave us the answers we expected. Zixtal finished, while their real capabilities remained hidden. The quarantine field collapsed completely as the Ghost Fleet finished their work. But instead of attacking, the human ships simply took up defensive positions around Earth. This is humanity's final warning. President Lai Wei announced to the Nexus fleet. We have shown you a fraction of our true capabilities. We did not reveal these technologies before because we genuinely desire peace. But make no mistake, if you force this conflict to continue, you will learn why our history of warfare makes us so dangerous. In the first contact center, Sarah watched the Nexus ships carefully. They're reconsidering their options. Their sensors are going crazy trying to analyze our Ghost Fleet technology. Let them look, Hayes said. They thought they could contain us because they believed they understood our limits. Now they realize they never understood us at all. Torres nodded. Humans don't just think outside the box. We take the box apart, reassemble it into something new, and then use it in ways its creators never imagined. The Nexus Council convened an emergency session. Their previous certainty shattered. They had tried to contain humanity, only to discover that humans had spent decades preparing for exactly this kind of scenario. Not out of aggression, but out of a deep-rooted understanding that peace must be secured through strength. As the Council debated their next move, humanity's message echoed in their minds. They had only seen a fraction of Earth's true capabilities. The question now was whether the Nexus would learn from their mistake, or if they would push humanity to reveal even more of their hidden strengths. Because the Ghost Fleet wasn't humanity's last line of defense, it was just the first they had chosen to reveal. In the depths of Titan's largest methane sea, a secret human facility buzzed with activity. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display, showing the positions of both the Ghost Fleet and the still-present Nexus Armada. Behind her, a massive quantum computer core pulsed with calculations that even the Nexus's advanced systems couldn't comprehend. They're still trying to understand how we phased through their barrier, she reported to the gathered military command. But they're missing the bigger picture. Admiral Hayes nodded, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic glow. That's always been their weakness. They look for technological solutions while ignoring the human factor. The human factor. It was what the Nexus couldn't quantify in their predictions and assessments. The peculiar combination of innovation, desperation, and determination that had defined human history. In the Nexus Council's emergency session, that same unpredictability was causing unprecedented discord. Their ghost fleet technology violates 12 different laws of physics. Clacks chittered, their mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. It shouldn't be possible for them to have developed this in secret. Miraven's scales shifted color and thought. Perhaps we should consider that our understanding of possible needs revision. These humans, they don't just ignore limitations, they refuse to acknowledge them in the first place. On the primary Nexus command ship, High Counselor Vexthor received a priority transmission from their deep space monitoring stations. Their crystalline form clouded with concern as they processed the information. Impossible, they whispered, but they were beginning to hate that word. Because humans kept making the impossible happen. The transmission showed human quantum signatures far beyond the solar system. Somehow, while under observation, humanity had established colonies not just on Mars or the moons of Jupiter, but in other star systems entirely. How? Vexthor demanded of their analysts. How did they achieve this without us detecting their ships? The answer came from an unexpected source. A young Nexus scientist who had been studying human entertainment media. They didn't use ships, she reported. At least, not in the way we understand them. They'd been experimenting with quantum tunneling on a massive scale. They're science fiction stories. They weren't fiction. They were blueprints. In the Titan facility, Sarah received the Nexus's latest scans of human space. She smiled slightly. They finally found the extrasolar colonies. Took them long enough. How are they reacting? Torres asked, his dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. Just like we predicted. They're so focused on how we achieved it, they haven't asked themselves why we did it in secret. Sarah brought up a new display, showing a complex network of quantum-entangled communications linking Earth to its hidden colonies. They still think containment is possible. Should we show them Phase 3? Hayes asked, her hand hovering over a secured command interface. President Lai Wei's hologram shimmered into existence among them. Not yet. First, let them process what they've already learned. Sometimes the greatest weapon is letting your opponent imagine what else you might be capable of. The Nexus fleet remained in position, but their previous confidence had evaporated. Every scan of Earth revealed new complexities, new impossibilities. They detected quantum fluctuations they couldn't explain, energy signatures that defied their physics, and patterns of human activity that suggested capabilities far beyond what any species should have achieved in such a short time. They're watching us now, Sarah noted, monitoring the Nexus scans. Really watching us, not just observing. They're finally starting to understand. Understand what? Asked a young lieutenant. Hayes answered, her voice carrying the weight of human history. That humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our perspective. We look at limitations as challenges. We see barriers as puzzles to be solved. And most importantly, we never assume anything is truly impossible. In their command ship, Vexthor received another report that challenged their understanding of reality. Human quantum signatures were appearing and disappearing across the galaxy, suggesting a transportation system that made their fastest ships look primitive. They've mapped the quantum fabric of space itself, their chief scientist reported, their usual confidence shattered. They're not just moving through space, they're treating space-time as a tool, a resource to be manipulated. How do we fight an enemy that doesn't obey the laws of physics? Clacks demanded. Miraven, who had spent the most time studying human history, finally spoke up. Perhaps that's the wrong question. Perhaps we should be asking why we're trying to fight them at all. Because with each passing moment, the Nexus was learning what humans had been trying to tell them from the beginning, that humanity's warning to run hadn't been a threat, but an attempt to prevent the Nexus from making a terrible mistake. As the standoff continued, Sarah monitored the quantum signatures of the Nexus fleet. Their energy patterns were changing, suggesting internal conflict and uncertainty. "They're starting to realize," she said softly, "that everything we've shown them so far has been defensive. They're finally asking themselves what would happen if humanity decided to strike back. The answer to that question would shake the foundations of the galaxy. Because humanity had one final secret, one last demonstration of their capability that would force the Nexus to confront the true meaning of impossible. And if the Nexus made the wrong choice, they would learn why humans had spent their entire history preparing for moments exactly like this." The Titan facility's quantum core suddenly pulsed with unprecedented activity. Dr. Sarah Chen's eyes widened as she interpreted the data streaming across her displays. "They're making their move," she announced to the command staff. "The Nexus fleet is powering up their primary weapons." Admiral Hayes straightened, her expression grim but unsurprised. "So they've chosen to learn the hard way." The Nexus ships had arranged themselves in a complex three-dimensional pattern, their bioorganic hulls resonating with enough energy to reshape the solar system itself. High Counselor Vexthor's voice echoed through all human communications channels. "Humanity, you have demonstrated capabilities that threaten the established order of the galaxy. We cannot allow such unpredictability to exist. Submit to Nexus authority, or we will be forced to take decisive action." President Lai Wei's response was calm, almost sympathetic. "You still don't understand what you're facing, do you? Very well. Dr. Chen, initiate Protocol Omega." Sarah's fingers danced across her quantum interface. Throughout the solar system, hidden human installations activated. But these weren't weapons platforms or defense systems. They were something far more fundamental. "Reality anchors online," she reported. "Quantum field stabilized." The Nexus fleet fired as one, releasing enough energy to rearrange the atomic structure of a planet. But something impossible happened, or rather, something impossible didn't happen. Their weapons simply stopped working. "What is this?" Klax demanded, mandibles clicking in panic. "Our weapons are at full power, but they can't affect the space around Earth anymore," Sarah completed for them, her voice carrying across all channels. "Because we're not just manipulating space-time anymore. We're controlling which laws of physics apply within our sphere of influence." The revelation hit the Nexus Council like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just developed advanced technology. They had achieved something that should have been forever impossible. They had learned to selectively enforce or ignore the fundamental laws of reality itself. "The reality anchors were our final defense," General Torres explained to the stunned Nexus leadership. "We developed them not to wage war, but to prevent it. Within their field of influence, we decide which physical laws remain active. This is beyond impossible." Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed with waves of distress. "No species can simply choose which laws of physics to obey." "That's your problem," Hayes responded. "You keep thinking in terms of what's possible and impossible. Humanity stopped accepting those limitations millennia ago. We look at the laws of physics the same way we look at human laws, as guidelines that sometimes need to be selectively enforced or temporarily suspended." In the Titan facility, Sarah brought up a new display showing the quantum structure of local spacetime. "We're not breaking the laws of physics," she explained. "We're just choosing which ones apply at any given moment, like a judge choosing which laws are relevant to a particular case." The Nexus fleet hung powerless in space, their most powerful weapons rendered useless by humanity's control over reality itself. But instead of pressing their advantage, humanity did something that once again defied the Nexus' predictions. They turned the reality anchors off. "We could maintain this field indefinitely," President Lai Wei announced. "We could expand it to encompass your entire fleet. We could selectively apply or suspend any physical law we choose. But that's not who we are. We don't want to rule the galaxy," Sarah added. "We don't want to control or dominate other species. All we want is to be left in peace to continue our development, our exploration, our evolution. Nira Ven, who had watched humanity the longest, finally understood. All this time, she said, her scales shifting to a deep blue of revelation. Your warnings weren't threats. They were attempts to prevent unnecessary conflict. You developed these capabilities not to wage war, but to make war impossible, Hayes completed. Because humans learned long ago that the best way to prevent a fight is to make sure your potential adversary knows it can't win. The Nexus Council convened one final time. They had come to contain a threat, only to discover something beyond their comprehension, a species that had transcended the very concepts of possible and impossible. We offer peace, Vexthor announced, their crystalline form now clear with decision. Not as superiors or rulers, but as equals. Perhaps even as students. In the Titan facility, humanity's leaders shared knowing looks. This was what they had hoped for all along. Not submission, not conflict, but understanding. We accept, President Lai Wei responded, and we offer something in return. Knowledge, not just of our technology, but of how we think, because humanity's greatest achievement isn't controlling reality. It's refusing to accept that anything is truly impossible, Sarah completed. That's the real human factor. We don't just push boundaries. We deny their existence entirely. As the Nexus fleet prepared to return home, they carried with them a profound lesson. In trying to contain humanity, they had instead discovered something far more valuable. A species that had turned imagination into reality, that had made the impossible possible not through superior technology, but through sheer determination and creativity. Because in the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their reality anchors or their ghost fleet or their quantum technology. It was their fundamental belief that limitations exist only until someone decides to transcend them. And that, perhaps, was why the galaxy needed humanity after all. In the Titan facility, Sarah watched the Nexus ships depart. "Do you think they finally understand?" she asked. Hayes smiled. "They understand enough. They understand that humans aren't just another species to be cataloged and controlled. We're something new in the galaxy, a species that refuses to accept impossible as an answer. And that," Torres added, "makes us the most dangerous and the most valuable species they've ever encountered." As Earth's leaders prepared for a new era of galactic cooperation, they knew that humanity had achieved something remarkable, not just mastery over physics, but victory without warfare, advancement without conquest, and peace through understanding. Because sometimes the greatest victories come not from proving your strength, but from teaching others why you never wanted to use it in the first place.